So let's get on to the second story that I wanted to talk about today. Megan Rapinoe, whatever. So this is coming from Sports Illustrated. I remember being a kid and the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition was like the coolest thing ever because it like had like the hot chicks on it or whatever. Don't tell my girlfriend I said that. But it had like the hot chicks on it or whatever. And so I loved Sports Illustrated growing up. Now that I've actually read some of the articles, it is one of the most leftist things ever. But they're the main ones that were reporting on this story. And so I'm going to use their article to talk about it. Okay, so Sports Illustrated. Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe among 40 athletes to sign letter opposing federal anti-trans sports ban. Here's the thing. Anytime in this article, just because I can't stand it, in this article, whenever it says quote unquote anti-trans, I'm going to say pro-woman because to me, this, and honestly, in objective truth, this bill is not anti-trans, it is pro-woman. And I'm going to get into the bill and the specifics of it and everything like that. But let's just start here. Okay, so anytime it actually says anti-trans, I'm saying pro-woman, just so you know. Okay, so according to the article, a group of 40 professional Olympic and Paralympic athletes signed a letter regarding recent pro-woman sports bans sent to the House of Representatives legislative directors on Monday. The athletes included United States women's national team, United soccer, I don't know, USWNT, I think it's United States women's national team star, Megan Rapinoe. We all know her. She's been the one that's been fighting for equal pay and everything. And then recently retired WNBA star Sue Bird and United States women's national team star Becky Sauerbrunn. The remaining athletes who signed the letter organized by the LGBTQ advocacy group Athlete Ally compete in various sports such as soccer, hockey, and rugby. The letter calls out the Republican-led, quote, Protection of Girls and Women in Sports Act, H.R. 734. And here's what it says about this act in Sports Illustrated. It says, H.R. 734 would ban transgender and intersex girls and women from competing in sports across the country. If the bill passes, it would become part of Title IX legislation. Okay, so there's more to this article. There is more. But the funniest part of it to me is that it describes this bill, again, the Protection of Girls and Women in Sports Act, H.R. 734. It describes it as that it would ban transgender and intersex girls and women from competing in sports across the country. That is not true at all. That is not true. You want to know how I know it's not true? Because I've read the bill. That's all it takes. So here's a quick summary. H.R. 734 from the 118th Congress. This is from congress.gov. Is from them specifically. This was introduced in the House on February 1st of 2023. It's the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. And this bill generally prohibits school athletic programs from allowing individuals whose biological sex at birth was male to participate in programs that are for women or girls. Specifically, the bill provides that it is a violation of Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 for federally funded education programs or activities to operate, sponsor, or facilitate athletic programs or activities that allow individuals of the male sex to participate in programs or activities that are designed for women or girls. This bill does not, again, this bill does not prohibit male individuals from training or practicing with programs or activities for women or girls as long as such training or practice does not deprive any female of corresponding opportunities or benefits. Under this bill, sex is based on an individual's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. They have made it abundantly clear, this legislation, that it is not actually banning trans and intersex girls and women from competing in sports across the country. Again, that's the quote from Sports Illustrated. H.R. 734, which would ban transgender and intersex girls and women from competing in sports across the country. That's not true. It's not banning trans girls or intersex girls and women from competing in sports across the country. What it is banning is them competing in sports in which they have a biological advantage in. A sport in which they are actually a man and they are going up against women. They could still go and play in the men's sports. If you're a trans girl, a man pretending to be a woman, you could go still play under this legislation with the boys and the men. Because Title IX was created to protect women's sports. And that's why this act, because it's become a national controversy that we have men competing in women's sports, we have to actually write legislation that says biological men should not compete against women in their sports. Period. Anyways, going on with this article, that just really made me mad. They completely destroy what the actual meaning of the bill is in the Sports Illustrated article. Anyways, keep going in the Sports Illustrated article. The 40 athletes who signed the letter expressed how the proposed bill, quote, does not protect women in sports, as it would exclude women and girls from getting necessary mental and physical health benefits. We believe that gender equity in sports is critical, which is why we urge policymakers to turn their attention and effort to the causes women athletes have been fighting for decades, including equal pay, an end to abuse and mistreatment, even uneven implementation of Title IX, and a lack of access for equity for girls of color and girls with disabilities, to name only a few, the letter reads. Our deepest hope is that transgender and intersex kids will never have to feel the isolation, exclusion, and othering that H.R. 734 is seeking to enshrine into law. Last week, the Biden administration proposed new guidelines, which would include state legislators not being able to, quote, outright ban transgender athletes from competing in sports. In recent years, 20 states have enacted laws to ban transgender athletes from participating in public schools and colleges. Those states include Kansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Oklahoma. Well, I got my list of places that I'm looking to move, because if I have a daughter, I do not want them competing against a man in their sport. And I want, so here's the thing, is that they claim, these athletes, including Megan Rapinoe, we all know her, they all claim that they want equitable access for women in these sports. But you're going to let all these spots be taken by men? The spots on the varsity teams and such? You want them to be taken by men? Absurd to me. Again, this bill does not prevent real women from playing women's sports. It doesn't even prevent trans people from playing sports. You just have to play the sport for which you were assigned at birth. Because that's where your biology is. That's where your biological imperatives are. Anyways, this actually gets kind of better, because Megan Rapinoe is actually a part of when the USA women's soccer team actually played against a boys team several years ago and lost. The boys, so the women's soccer team, in which Megan Rapinoe, we all know. I hope you guys all know who Megan Rapinoe is. I'm going to pull up a picture. She's in the we'll just look at this right here. This is Megan Rapinoe as I'm pulling it up. This one right here. So that's her. You've probably heard of her before. She was complaining that men's teams and women's teams don't get paid enough. That's actually a whole story in and of itself. Actually, so here's what happened. So first, I'm going to actually take a trip down Megan Rapinoe lane. So Megan Rapinoe complained. She kind of made headlines when the U.S. women's team won the World Cup. Actually, a really big feat, really good for their team, and really good for America. This was back in like 2016-ish era. And they were complaining that they did not get paid the same as the men's team, that they got paid less than the men's team. But here's actually what happened. I'm going to try to find an article, because I was just thinking about this. Equal pay. Okay, so here's actually what happened is so the women's soccer team, so from what I understand, in their soccer contract, in their contract for Okay, so here's the thing: is back when they were negotiating their contract. So here's according to the Daily Wire: the unions for the men and women's team are currently separate and have no obligation to bargain jointly or to agree to similar terms. The men's contract expired in 2018, while the women's runs through December of this is 2021. As recently as July, the Daily Wire's Ash noted that the U.S. women's national soccer team admitted that they were paid the same, if not more, than the United States men's national team, but still argued they didn't receive equal pay because they, quote, had to work more than a man and be much more successful to receive, quote, the same amount of pay. She continued, The Hill reported that the women's team has appealed the May 2020 decision of Judge Gary Klausner, who dismissed the team's claim that they were discriminated against because of their gender and the issue of pay. As the Daily Wire reported at the time, Klausner noted that the women's team rejected the same pay structure as the men's team. Okay, so back in the day, I wanted to make sure that I was all right with this. So back in the day, in like 2019, 2018, they were offered, the women's team was offered a same pay structure as the men's team. But this pay structure made it so that you get paid on a game basis. So the more games you win, the more you get paid. As the women's team said, no, we want a flat pay rate. We just want to get paid a flat rate for the amount of games that we play, period. Doesn't matter win or anything like that. We just want to get paid. And then they ended up winning a lot, and they ended up making less than the men's team because they accepted a different contract, even though they were offered an equal pay strategy. And Megan Rapinoe was like the face of like, we're not getting paid the same. We're not getting paid the same. Then it came out that they could have, but they didn't because of their own decision. Anyways, going back to this issue, now Megan Rapinoe, this girl, this woman, who was made famous because she was a great soccer player, female soccer player, that did a lot of great work for the women's team, helped them win the World Cup and everything. They actually also, you want to talk about men in women's sports. So the world champions, so again, the U.S. women's World Cup team, including Megan Rapinoe, actually ended up playing a man's team. So the USA women's football team, they were convincingly beaten by a team of young men. This is according to the Daily Mail, from world champions to humbling defeat against under 15 side. World Cup winning USA women's team suffers a 5-2 loss against the Dallas Academy boys. Okay. So this is back in 2017. The women's soccer team lost 5-2 to a under 15-year-old Dallas Academy boys team. USA women's team played a warm-up for a Russia friendly against the Dallas under 15s game. Informal game. This was an informal game that did not go to plan for international side as they lost 5-2. Results did not seem to matter to the USA because Team USA ended up actually beating Russia, the female Russian team, 4-0 in the main fixture. And the players' spirits were still high after their humbling loss as they posed for photos. I can show those now. Here's some different photos of the USA women's team. There's Megan Rapinoe with one of the Dallas boys. So basically these guys, these 15 and under boys, destroyed the top women's soccer team in the world at the time. And yet Megan Rapinoe right there still wants boys, biological men, to be able to play in women's sports. This is the world we live in. Where are people's brains? Where are people's brains? I don't understand it. I feel like it's just an outrage culture in which people just need to find something to be mad at. In reality, when it comes to Megan Rapinoe, she is virtue signaling, because even though she knows firsthand that men that are as practiced and as fit as women will, depending on the sport, but for most sports like soccer, will beat the women for the most part. Almost overwhelmingly, men of a sport will beat women at the same sport. Not me. I probably wouldn't. I'm not the most athletic person. I'll admit it here. This is why I talk for a living on YouTube and on the radio, and not actually play any sports or anything like that nearly as much. But put the NBA against the WNBA, the men win. Period.